At 1 o'clock, the radio came on, and the agent there that Italy had gone into war. They picked up the men to take them to camp. There was Mr. Orlando, Mr. Brenner, Mr. Maggi.
I came home from school and the house was loaded with RCMP.
When I came back from school on the day that my dad was arrested, my comare across the street had taken me and bought some ice cream for me, and I remember prying into the ice cream. It was a strange day.
Mrs. Orlando called me and said, Antonietta, they took my boys and I don't know where.
These people were jailed. That's what internment means.
A murderer and a thief at that time had a right to a trial, a lawyer and everything else. These guys didn't.
Well, there isn't anything you could do because under the War Measures Act, we didn't have too many rights or reason to complain.
Was it just? Was it appropriate? Was it responsive to a real threat? Look at the people that went there. What did they do?
There were 3 items that were taboo. A picture of Benito Mussolini, Italian flag, and a gun. Any variation of it, they took that back immediately.
My dad was not happy about the alliance with Germany. To be frank, he was an admirer of Mussolini, and he wasn't alone, as you know. There was Churchill and Roosevelt, Mahatma Gandhi, and a good number of people. So it's not surprising that many Italians were also admiring him.
Stalin was a bad man. Later on, I'm in the Navy, Stalin's a good man. In the 50s, he's a bad man. It started me thinking, well, the government's telling me who's bad, who's good, and when I should think they're bad and when I should think they're good.
There was never any due process. Nobody was ever charged. But war is madness, and we do mad things.
I have to say, as a Canadian, I'm ashamed of that.
My father-in-law was interned, and his 2 sons were conscripted into the Canadian Army.
2 weeks, we lost 3 of the boys on Manning Avenue, on Claremont, and up on Gore Street.
What made it rough is a woman with, in my case, 4 children, and there's no income.
They were living in a garage through the winter, no heat. The 3rd child, she taken from my mother.
By the kids that were calling us Dagos. Dagos, what are you doing here? Dagos. Yet my father had been there longer than their father.
It is the worst of what happens to the human condition. And the tragedies that occur when that happens are just irreparable.
I wish it was a second-class citizens. We were treated as inhumane.
I had 3 choices. One of them was to go into the army or go to work in Sarnia. If I refused those 2, he says, I'll pick up the phone, I'll call the RCMP, and you're going to the concentration camp in Petawawa. So that shook me up pretty good.
The irony of saying to someone, your options are go fight for Canada, or the alternative is we will intern you as being a risk or a threat to Canadian society.
My mother was approached by Barsani or Bersani, something of that sort. And he would approach people and ask, I'll help you get the man out. One of the things they asked my mom was to sign a paper that would implicate the apostolic delegate and say that my dad was getting orders from him and they would release my dad then if she signed it. And of course she said he could stay there all his life. I will never do a thing like that. And Mother asked the judge, why would you use a man like that? And the answer was, we use a dirty broom to clean the stable.
He wanted $500
who would help her release her husband. Now, $500 in 1940, for $900 you bought a house.
My dad was approached the same way. He required money to pay this well-known politician, and he did not have the money.
I'm not sorry, but God bless them. So what the heck are they accusing us of? All the good deeds done by us, have they been completely forgotten?
Here's my eldest brother, Bill Guglielmo. Bill, by the way, had joined the army by this time, my mother. My father had been out of camp probably 6 or 7 months, and he joined the Navy. Presumably he was still an enemy alien. And that's me. I was 16, hadn't turned 17. I was in the Navy. 1 month later I was in Halifax. A month after that I was in convoy on the destroyer, the St. Clair.
There were 2 people who were interned who lost sons in the war while they were interned.
Yes, one was the Rainoli family. His son was killed on the invasion of Anzio Beach.
Right.
He was fighting for the Canadian Army, and his father was in the camp.
This whole period is a stain on our history.
The tragedy of the Italian internment was that the majority of them were actually Canadians. They were not Italians.
It's important not to look back and judge history, but to understand what happened and to give a voice to the families.
That looking and scrutinizing and being inquisitive about the internment and other issues will make us better Canadians and better citizens of the world.
My roots are in Italy, and it's always been where you were born, but my heart and my whole life is Canada.